Grace, Geltman, and Weld on the Hammer Factor. Take it away, boys.
How Facili is making up for his insignificance in the world of paddling by creating this shrig thing.
He didn't create it, for one thing.
Josh Head did, right?
Yeah.
Well, I can't find it.
Also, if you think Fusilli is insignificant in the world of battling, I'm not exactly clear on what standards you're applying there.
Yeah, you need to paddle with him once or twice and reevaluate that statement.
Your significance in the world of paddling is not like... Yeah.
You know, I need to...
What do we do? These are things we should
wrong.
talk about on the show. I mean, what are we doing here? This is seriously. This is kooky talk.
All right. Welcome
Where's
to...
the shrig comment?
I can't find it. And that's something I'm going to say on the show is just please send all the comments to the website, the Hammer Factor email address, because I get them on my phone, I get them on my personal email, I get them on my personal Facebook, I get them on the actual Hammer Factor Facebook page, and I lose them, and I need help. Please help us. Welcome to Hammer Factor, episode 63. My name is John Grace, producer of this Whitewater show. On the horn with me, we have Whitewater legend John Weld, policy director for the Outdoor Alliance, Lewis Geltman. We got a big show lined up, helmet certification, an update on our good buddy Ryan Zinke, little white race recap from Lewis, coming in there, what, 5th, 6th, Lewis?
Tied 6 with Will Pruitt.
Tied 6. But before we get into the show, this episode of the Hammer Factor is brought to you by the O.B. Joyful Creek Race, returning to Colorado June 22nd, 2019. As much as Geltman, Weld, and Grace rag on Colorado boating, they're really just jealous they don't have a clean 400-foot-per-mile creek in their backyard. In fact, Grace was one of the last people to host a race here. Hey, let me finish. In fact, Grace was one of the last people to host a race here. That must be saying something, right? Our current snowpack is at 140% of average, so bust out your shred sled and head out to Crested Butte this June for a wild time. You can learn more by searching OB Joyful Race on Facebook or Google. So, yeah, there you have it. Thanks for those guys reaching out. You know, normally we only do ads where you have to do 3, but these guys were like, "Hey, hook us up," so we hooked them up.
The third episode.
Have you guys run OB Joyful?
Anyway.
Yeah, I've ran OB Joyful a bunch. I put on a giant slalom race there.
Have you, Geltman?
Yeah. It's been a hot minute.
It's a
Have you seen that video that's somewhere on the internet of that kid's kayak literally breaking in half on one of the slides?
That is incredible.
It's like one of the all-time greatest kayak carnage shots ever.
There's one video of a guy running a waterfall in a Liquid Logic boat. It's shot from the river right bank, and the boat gets ejected into orbit basically without a person in it.
Silver Falls.
Is that what it is?
That's actually happened to multiple people there.
Yeah, that video was actually brought up in a warranty claim with that boat in Liquid Logic. Shane got a hold of the video. It was like, no. If I understand the story correctly.
What was his gripe with that?
So that's also on the kayak video. Kayak Carnage, Mount Rushmore.
So it's been a minute.
There's some wild water boat carnage in there as well.
It's been a minute since we last recorded a show. What's been going on?
I don't know. We had a brief but pleasant kayaking season out here. The Little White's about 24 hours away from dropping out, I would say.
What is it? Is it 3 feet?
Yeah, it's about that.
Ooh, get out there while you can.
Yeah, it's been like the worst kayaking season ever. But I'm glad we got a little something in there, and we had decent water for the race. We moved the race up like about a month this year, thank God. You know, we had one year when the race was like 3.8, and that was awesome. And besides that, it's been like below 3 feet for the race almost every year because we were doing it around the World Class Academy schedule because Capo organizes it and all the kids kind of help out. So moved it up this year. Race was last weekend, and it was awesome. kid group, like Jared absolutely smashed, just incredible. I mean, he beat Dane by almost 15 seconds, and like it was not like Dane had a bad run or like I don't know, just really impressive. I was like blown away by how spaced out times were at the top of the result sheet. It was Jared, Dane, Todd Wells third. Um,
What were the times?
Jared, I want to say was 1409, 1400 something. Like 15 seconds ahead of Dane. I think he was 10 seconds ahead of Todd. Another 10 seconds back to fourth or fifth.
Where were you at?
I think I was 14:59, so like 50 seconds behind Jared.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like we have a deep field out here. Like everybody's like real good, and it's just sort of contemplating how like I mean, we obviously don't have as many people as the Green Race, but like everybody is super solid. Like there's no carnage at all. Like everybody's good, but I don't know. I mean, time seemed really spaced out compared to like what you guys get at the Green Race. So maybe we're not as. And maybe it's just the nature of the beast. I don't know. Longer race.
Well, I bet percentage-wise, if you did the math, it would be similar. A 5-minute race versus a 14-minute race.
I feel like there's a lot more potential lines on the Little White too. I mean, the Green Race, the race route's pretty prescribed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everyone's within a couple inches of the same line.
For the most part, yeah.
I really like enjoy the process of sort of geeking out about race lines in the Little Way. We spent a ton of time just like talking about, every single thing. But at the end of the day, like I really don't think that line selection makes that big of a difference. Like if you're having a hard time discerning which line is faster, it's enough whitewater that like paddling the slower line really well is going to be faster than like a B plus line on what's hypothetically the faster line.
Yeah.
So they did a side by side with Dane and Gerd's run right at the very end of the party,
Mm-hmm.
and it was pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah, I mean they were basically like tied at Island, which is probably 5 minutes into the race, and then Jared just like pulled away.
You know what his secret is, don't you?
I've heard a few theories.
You've got that. I sent you that clip of him racing on the stand-up paddleboard, didn't I?
Here we go.
Oh God.
Hey,
He probably would have been sub 14 without the supping.
hey! All I'm saying, Dane, he is a supper as well. Look at top. If you want to creep in there, Lewis, age regardless, whatever, get yourself a paddleboard. That's all I'm saying.
Didn't you just spend like 5 days at like what appeared to me to be like a whites only SUP paddle fest somewhere?
The Carolina Cup. Yeah, I did.
That's what I meant.
Everybody there wearing some kind of like surf t-shirt and cargo shorts, like possibly a visor, driving a Sprinter van, I'm gonna guess.
You guys
probably
Check.
many one
Check.
wheels.
Check.
you Sprinter vans galore. Let me add that. Now it was
bunch of like wiry dudes in their late 40s.
No, that's not.
So
Well,
right.
there are some of those dudes, but that is not actually the case. Dude, it's a sick course, man. You race around an island. It's a 13-mile race. You're out in the open ocean, swells. You have to go in an inlet. You have to bust out of an inlet through the breakers. There's current, wind to deal with. You guys should get on the train, get up there with Jared and Dane and.
Do people throw you like shakas all the time, or if they pick up on shrimp?
All right. So what's up with the Shrig? We got a comment. Someone sent in a comment basically asking why Facili was trying to justify his existence in the paddle sports world by creating new terms.
Well, he didn't create the term, for one thing. I think if you have to ask about Shrig, you'll never know exactly what it means. It's kind of how that works.
Shrig.
But if you're questioning Dave Fuseli's paddling ability, I mean, you need to paddle with Dave a couple times and reevaluate that question.
Well, did you race?
That's an ignorant comment.
What's that?
Did you race, John?
No.
Are you going to get out there next year?
I don't know. I did paddle the other day. It was awesome. Really fun. I paddled with Anna Wagner, who I should give props to. Anna Wagner is one of the female paddlers out here who, it was a small group. It was me, Max, Jake, who works for us, and Anna. And there was no gender bias whatsoever. She is a solid paddler, period. No conditions. I'll also point out she was in a 9R, right? Which weighs what, 45 pounds? So I was doing the math on this. She's about what, 5'2", maybe? Something like that, 120 some pounds. So if that's a 45-pound boat, would be the same as us paddling an almost 70-pound boat down that river. If you do the same ratio of weight to boat.
Wow.
Right? And she's, Gelman, you've seen her out there. She styles it.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
so,
it is a sick paddler.
Yeah. I don't know. There's something to be said about that.
No, I agree. That's I never thought about it like that, but that's a big difference. What about you guys got any 9R2 spottings out there?
Yeah, Jared raced it, and it looks pretty sick, man. I'm intrigued. I have a feeling that I'm too big for that boat as like a real full-on shit runner, but it looks pretty sweet. It definitely looks a little more rocker. Like it looks like it's got a little more of that Waka kind of feel to it than the original 9R.
Huh.
It looks pretty compelling. The boys are making it sing.
I paddled the 9R a bunch earlier this season, and I weigh about 175, 180 pounds, and I've been paddling a Machno recently. I can tell you my strong opinion is that I am too big for that boat. I think if you weigh 175 pounds, that boat is too small for you.
For the 9R?
For the 9R.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I think
in case people are wondering, that's my opinion on that.
It depends where you're paddling it, though, if you're just like running Upper Yacht or something, you can definitely paddle it like 175
For sure.
I feel like just paddling the Waka boats, and especially that OG, has just like ruined me for anything other than the absolute easiest kayak.
Right. The Machno is so easy. It almost is cheating.
It's cool too. Like I've been thinking a lot lately that, like 10 years ago, like a really easy kayak, like a Jefe Grande or something like that, was just like mush. And now there's really easy boats like the OG that are still like pretty dynamic and sporty and like do fun, cool things. It's not just like giving up on high performance to have the boat be really easy.
What do you think makes that boat so good, Lewis? Is it just wide and sit you up high? Is it?
I actually don't like the width that much. I think it's just having a ton of rocker, and I think the stern works really well. Like it just has like a really good hard edge in the stern that does some interesting things for you. I'm on the high rocker program. It's like I like it.
What other boats are in that genre, would you say?
I don't know. I think that's the one that takes it the furthest for sure. The Stout, if you're little, although that has way less rocker than the OG. I don't know. I was just like, I loved the Tuna 1. I was kind of lukewarm on the Tuna 2 and the Gangster. But the OG is sick.
Back to your race, Lewis. Did you mess up anywhere? Did you have any mistakes, or did you have a clean run? Or
it was pretty clean. I feel like my body feels pretty good, and I feel pretty good in the boat right now, but I just don't feel like I'm in just like really good shape, to be honest. Like I feel like we just had such a lousy paddling season that I just haven't paddled as much as I usually have by this point in the year. And I have a Gangster that I don't paddle very much, and I paddled it for like the week before the race, intending to race it because I really think that boat, it is a lot faster on flat water, and it has way less rocker, and it comes out of drops way flatter. And I paddled it all week, and I was just like getting kind of frustrated with it, and I kind of decided that I was just not in good enough shape to like keep that boat running fast the whole time, and that I'd be faster in like an easy boat and just not make any mistakes. And it's just so easy to keep the bow dry in that OG and like just kind of keep the boat popping along that I decided to race that at the kind of the last minute. Nice. And I guess I was just sort of like, like if I have a race run and I look back on that run and I'm like, the only thing I could have done to go faster was paddle a faster kayak, like I'll be pretty happy with that run,
Yeah, truth there. I mean,
it's just long. It's like there's so much time in, not like making mistakes so much. It's just like whether you're able to just keep the boat popping all the time and like keep your bow dry and skip out of every drop and like kind of setting yourself up for success that way, I think is the way to go, at least at my fitness level.
That's where time on the paddleboard. All right, let's get into it. Lewis, so, I mean, Zinke just keeps winning. It doesn't matter. Even when he loses, he wins. So we just had this article.
Zinke is such a piker, man. He's not winning. It's just like...
This would be the point in the show where we would like the Daily Show. We would start playing back clips of Lewis's praise for Zinke.
Oh my god!
Just doing the reel.
I'm so glad we have that on file. It's just gonna get more valuable over time.
It's like, look, this is the world we live in, right? It's like we're not gonna get like the second coming of Stuart Udall. It's gonna be. It's like that's not who Donald Trump is gonna appoint the Secretary of the Interior.
I don't think he's
we had high hopes for Ryan Zinke, and he let us down big time. And now he's off working for a gold company, apparently.
And who's the acting secretary now?
David Bernhardt was just confirmed.
Okay, he sounds like another wonderful pick.
I just think it's funny, the transition of, I mean, you predicted this precisely, Lewis, but you kind of made not, your prediction wasn't entirely accurate, because you said if he just would have kept his head down and he just would have rode it out and not just been so over the top corrupt, he would have got one of these sweet gigs, just consulting for some firm and, just get paid to go do whatever. Well, I mean, he got let go. He totally screwed up and he still won. I mean, he's getting $100,000 a year to what does he do? What does a job like that do, Lewis? A guy like him now, what's he get paid that $100,000 for?
It's not exactly clear to me, to be honest. I mean, I'm guessing that it's to go back and try to influence his former colleagues to do the bidding of these mining companies, which is, I mean, yeah. I mean, what can you say? It's like, it's exactly what you expect to happen. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I think, has introduced legislation to prevent people from doing this, which, like, thank God. But, I mean, who knows if that would ever
well, she's a hysterical liberal, so I don't think we could take that.
I will not hear a bad word spoken about Elizabeth Warren on this podcast.
Oh, yes. Now we can have some fun. She's going to be on every show from here on out. What else, Lewis? What's going on the, Outdoor Alliance policy front?
I mean, we're pretty keen to try to kind of follow up on the success of this public lands package with some more recreation policy focused legislation this Congress, and it seems like there's an appetite to do that. That recreation, not red tape bill that I've talked about on here in the past, and it was something that we were pushing hard to get into the lands package, but couldn't quite get in there. I think that's going to get reintroduced this month, and that's something we're keen to work on a bunch. Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee had a hearing on recreation issues about a month ago. Tom O'Keefe from American Whitewater got invited to testify, which is awesome. He killed it.
I saw that.
So just kind of trying to build on that. I'm going to DC tomorrow, go meet with ENR committee staff, talk about some of these legislative ideas we have in the pipeline, and I don't know, expect to hear more as the summer goes on.
Hey, I got something. So, the recreation, not red tape that you guys have been working on, on a federal level? What? There needs to be some way to replicate that on the state and local level. There needs to be some kind of way to, because there's so much, like, I work with NC Wildlife a lot around the green. And I recently did a project up at Breaks Interstate Park where they got an awesome land manager and they're introducing climbing and whatnot. But it seems like there should be some way to I don't know, connect those pieces, have something for like someone who wants to put in a mountain bike trail or do something there where they can take this piece of knowledge and help them educate whoever the land manager is of that area.
Totally. I mean, I believe North Carolina just hired hired somebody to be the like state office of outdoor recreation there, and I mean that should be like squarely in that person's job description. We should get you guys connected.
Yeah, for sure. I just thought that was. I mean, we do like a race on the French Broad and a few other things on the national level where we get permits, but like most of it's on the, on a more local level. And I was like, man, I want to cite this stuff that's going on, but it's never, presented to that level of government. So something to put in your bonnet there.
No, that makes a ton of sense to me. You should connect with whoever the new state office person is.
Oh man, okay. Where do we go from here, man? Are we over time yet?
We're out of practice.
Should we just get right into the paddle stuff?
I feel like if we take like 2 months off and then dive right into paddle length and offset, people are going to be like, we're over this stupid podcast. I fear that we're going to...
Suffice to say that people continue to ask us about paddle offset and length, and I think we've said everything we need to say about it. We did get a couple questions about paddles that were not related to paddle offset, and one was about Gala Sport paddles, Geltman, which you use.
Yes.
And this came from Josh Gerstner. And the question is directed to slalom and Gala Sport corner of the room. Lewis, can a standard slalom paddle live up to long-term whitewater use? The Gala Sport Manic looks good for racing, but I was looking at their other options, saw the new MEG blade. It's more neutral without the forward blade offset, like the Adachi. Have you tried this one? Can you share any experience with Gala Sports MCQ construction, either straight or if you're bringing yourself to ergonomic or bench shaft? Anyway, you get the point. What do you think?
Yeah. I would not use a slalom paddle for creaking and expect any kind of longevity out of that. Like, they're just not built for that. I mean, they're super light and they're super stiff, and like you're gonna snap it. And if you don't snap it, the edges on the blades are like super thin to get that really nice touch in the water, and you're gonna beat it up super, super quickly. So unless you are down to go through several paddles every year and have a nice breakdown you don't mind using occasionally, I would not recommend trying to use a slalom paddle for creaking.
So suppose you want some of that slalom magic in a whitewater paddle from Gala Sport. What paddle would you choose from them?
The Manic. I mean, that's what that paddle is a slalom blade, slightly adapted and built in a heavier, more creaking appropriate construction. And that's what I use, and they're awesome.
We had another question from Travis. He wanted to get clarification on the bench shaft because he went to a local paddle store to get a paddle, and the staff there quickly informed him that bench shafts are dead and they should listen to the podcast. Story on that.
Yes.
So I thought I should give some clarification on that because I'm the one who declared
Suck
this
it,
to be
paddle.
the case. I think this guy had some kind of tendonitis or something, but I think if you don't have any injuries or you're not prone to tendonitis, I don't think you need a bench shaft. I don't think there's any advantage to a bench shaft, and there's nothing but downsides. But if you extend your hand forward like you're taking a paddle stroke, like extend your right hand forward, you can see if it's a straight shaft and you're starting to pull on that paddle, your pinky is getting the brunt of that first part of the stroke. The pinky's really extended. If you're going to maintain a grip on it, you're getting a weird disproportionate pull in your pinky side of your hand as you start the stroke, and bench shafts address that. I went to a bench shaft early on because when I used to start teaching kayaking in the spring and I'd paddle a ton, I'd always get tendonitis, and that fixed it. But that was pretty unique circumstances.
I feel like it's the opposite though. Like, aren't you kind of like releasing your pinky a little bit and pulling hard with your index finger?
Either one. You could phrase it either way. In either way, it's not allowing your grip to be equal on the paddle at the start of the paddle, which is where most of the force is.
And I think it's questionable, personally, that bench shaft solves that. But I'd offer Travis, I'd say, hey, get I don't know what kind of paddle exactly he's using, but rather than think about that, maybe try a smaller blade, or make sure the paddle has a fiberglass shaft so it's got a little more flex. You know, there's some other things in there.
I will say I have an Odachi bench shaft, and the Odachi has, a big offset, meaning, the blade is set back from the paddle shaft. It's not directly in line with the paddle, like the center of the blade, and that is weird. It's just weird, and you get a lot of flutter with a paddle. I would not get an Odachi bench shaft again, for sure. I think Odachis with that amount of offset should be completely relegated to straight shaft. If you have to get a bench shaft, get something like a Shogun.
No, that makes sense.
I think Dane uses an Odachi bench shaft. He makes it work.
Yeah, I mean that's not much of a testament though.
Travis,
paddle with two or make it look good probably. I heard he did one of those flips off of Spirit, which just blows my mind.
Oh, we gotta talk about that.
How can we not talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I'll find the link and put that in the show notes if for some reason you haven't seen this, but this just blew me away. I mean, it's a Cobra flip. A move invented by Aniol. And anyway, he just stuck the dog peters out of that thing off of Spirit, and it's just amazing to watch. I watched it over and over and over. I mean, how do you describe that? Like, what happened? Were either of you there that day?
I was in the pool at Spirit.
So describe what you saw, Lewis, firsthand.
I saw Dane come over the lip upside down and then right side up and then disappear into the mist, and I heard his hull hit the pool. It was sick, man. I mean, I like almost never run Spirit, and I so rarely paddle away from that drop with my body feeling as good as it did on the paddle in. And if I tried to do something like that, you'd be like pulling my shoulders out of chaos like one at a time, like just to be able to like take that hit, have the confidence to know that you're gonna, pull that thing around. Just like, it's so visually compelling. Just like all of it is sick. Just super, super cool progression, man.
I so would have just landed on my head.
Yeah. I would have blacked out. I just would have blacked out at the top and just like gone unconscious.
I quit. I give up.
Curled up the poison oak in the fetal position, crying. I don't want to go off Spirit upside down.
All right. Well, we got to finish Travis's email. He says, good email, Travis. Thanks for sending this in. He says, here's my rant and rave. I just finished that episode with Dave Facilier and Weed, and I cannot believe inbred culture of booty beers did not get involved with the conversation. I quit drinking years ago, but even when I would drink puddle water, if I spilled my whiskey in it, I thought that booty beers embarrassed the kayaking culture as a whole. Maybe it's just because they are drunk after the run that it did not get brought in, but I am much more into hanging out with some stoners than watching people drink paps out of smelly footwear. Anyway, thanks for the show.
I have to be honest, the booty beer thing has escaped me. I've never been paddling with people who take it that seriously. Do you guys hang with those crowds?
Oh yeah,
Do you?
I feel like it's a relatively new tradition in the world of whitewater, like in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. I just never.
But I think it's great. I'm like 100% in favor of the booty beer, and they should be enforced upon people. And if you don't drink, you should have to do a booty milk or something like that.
Well, it's safe. We brought the doctor on to discuss that, so.
Right.
I like this one from Mike Kayak. I've been listening for a few days, and at this point, I'm more confused than anything. You guys seem utterly certain about increasing blade offset and discarding bent shafts, yet no one of yins has offered a shred of empirical evidence or data to back up your assertions. I disagree, Mike. We have offered evidence that prove the contrary. But we're sticking by our assertions, or at least I am. This is one we really haven't talked about. This comes. I'm gonna beat through these paddles.
Oh,
and this is it.
God.
I mean, they're all coming in. We can't just like ignore this faction of the hammer factor. Okay.
I can hear the people
turning
off right now.
Going over to Joe Rogan.
I'm just envisioning the like skip 15 seconds ahead button that you get on your Podcast on the phone.
Go ahead, Grace. Try and make it 15 seconds exactly. That way people can hit the button.
We can get right into some of the more important topics here. This comes at us from Matt Swanson. He talks about small shaft paddles, which we haven't really ever talked about much. He says, I used the standard shaft for years, but developed significant issues with tennis elbow. This could maybe answer our first listener's question here. But it was resolved after switching to a small shaft. So that's good. Werner's narrow shaft is nicely indexed, unlike the standard shaft. Interesting. I've been paddling hard on my narrow shaft Shogun for about 3 years and haven't had a shaft break yet. Cheers. So there's Matt. Justin McQueen, he says, what episode did you explain the paddle offset metric? You guys are infamous for going on and on about. I'm 6'3" and just ordered a 204 centimeter Werner Powerhouse, longer than I've had in the past, and I'm hoping I didn't blow it by ordering it with a 30-degree feather. Is the offset metric that you guys talk about interchangeable with feather, or is it the offset metric that tells us how the blade is oriented to the center line of the shaft? We discussed that on part 2 episodes ago. The offset is where the paddle...
The center of the paddle shaft, the center of the blade is relative to the paddle shaft. Sometimes it's directly in line, sometimes it's set back a little bit.
And the feather is
we mix those terms constantly.
Yeah,
and
right.
That was what somebody had wrote us in to correct us about.
Yeah.
And they were right. You were wrong.
So I have an idea here. I think if you want personalized paddle advice, you can email us and just get an individual response if you're a Patreon subscriber. You get access to the pre-show, and we'll tell you what paddle you should use. And we don't have to talk about
pretty racy
anymore.
Yeah, the pre-show got out of hand this morning. Justin, I think you're good. 6'3", 204, 30 degree. I'm 6 foot. I use a 203, 30 degree. So there you go. All right, we're done with paddle talk.
Thank you.
Thank God.
Whew. Man, so where do I go from here? So the Strategic Outburst Reserve, this was sent to us. These guys, I love these guys. If you didn't hear about this or need to be brought up, there is a Facebook group that was created called the Dagger Outburst Strategic Reserve Coalition. Okay, and this coalition is all about trading what this group considers the greatest kayak ever made. And I really like this. This was sent to us. Will Hubbs post this. 1,100 miles and 17 hours of driving later, and the Outburst got to go on its maiden voyage. Stoked to join the Strategic Outburst Reserve Coalition. Guys, get you a girl that is willing to travel with you for a boat and cheesesteaks, and who will listen to 17 hours of the Hammer Factor podcast with you.
Dear Lord.
We want to get...
That's like a Guantanamo Bay scenario where you're just like torturing somebody with like waterboarding and Hammer Factor podcasts.
God damn, 17 hours in the car to buy an Outburst.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I wonder if the Outburst, I was thinking about this, is going to fall like the wayside of the Tornado or the RPM as new boats come onto the scheme. So I don't know if you know this, but there was a period of time where 16-year-old Tornadoes were going for like $900 here around Asheville because it was like the best boat. And finally, someone talked Preon into bringing a container of new ones over. And so they did it, and just about the time that shipment landed, Dagger came out with the green boat. And all of a sudden, no one wanted a Tornado. Kind of the same thing with the RPM and the Party Brap and the Ripper and whatnot. I wonder if there's going to be a boat that just brings down this Strategic Outburst Reserve Coalition.
I think you could make like a 10-foot Party Brap that would actually be a pretty compelling kayak.
I do too. I mean, I think if you're a designer of a kayak, you need to listen to these guys. If you're driving 17 hours, 1,100 miles to go get a boat that's 15 years old because the market can't offer you anything even close.
Grace, what's up with that Dagger, the Vanguard? Is that what they're calling it? Are they making a 10-foot boat, or is that a new green boat?
I think it's a new green boat. I don't know the links or the specs on it. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm trying to get my hands on one. I'm trying to get my hands on one of those and a 9R2. So I think
Does anyone paddle that Waka pod boat yet? I've yet to see one of these in person.
no.
They're about. The boys seem like they like them. I haven't paddled it yet. It seems like it's not quite as easy as the OG, and the stern without the pod seems a little on the big side, like not just spinning around with your bow in the air. But it seems like it does some worthwhile things. I've been meaning to try it mainly for podcast content.
Yeah, dude, get out there and give us an update, Lewis. I really want to hear.
I'm so lazy about paddling new boats. Like, the problem for me is that I'm just so particular about my outfitting that I know if I just borrow somebody else's boat and like throw a pair of flip-flops in for hip pads, I'm just gonna have a shitty day on the river. And it makes me not want to paddle new kayaks.
I'm such the opposite. I sat in that Machno and just paddled it as is.
Dude, I love trying
That's the
new
Valley
boats.
Mill way.
I love trying new boats. I love trying new old boats. Like a boat that was made 10 years ago that I never paddled.
Yeah, I wish I did, but I don't.
Harry Watson.
Boats keep getting better and better. That's kind of the problem. And you go back and you have fond memories. Like Kara has this dream of getting what's that Clay Wright Creek boat?
The Java.
The Java. She has this idea in her head that if she can just paddle the Java again, it'll answer all of her creeking problems. And I suspect she's going to get on that thing and be like, "Dear Lord, this is a disaster." I wonder the same thing about the Outburst. I'd love to paddle one of those because I have fond memories of that boat too. But I bet compared to a Ripper or a Brap, it's no fun.
The Outburst stands the test of time better than you might think. Like, I've paddled one on the Potomac a handful of times in the last recent years, and like it's like pretty damn fast and pivots pretty well. It's a pretty good boat.
Dude, there's room for that. I paddled the French Broad at like 20 grand the other day. And I was in a party brap, and some of the guys were in like modern short play boats and whatnot. And it's kind of flushed out, but there's 10 or 15 just great hit on the fly waves. And it was amazing how many of them that we could hit that the guy in the proper wave surfing boat never had a chance to get on. Or you'd hit one, and there'd be another one like downstream, but you'd have to ferry to the other side of the river. We could get off the wave, roll up or whatever, and make it over to the other one. He was missing them. So I can see like an Outburst would just kind of, if it still wouldn't purl and fit on the wave, could even make that process easier.
That boat is on my the Outburst is on my short list of like Grand Canyon boat recommendations.
See, I could see that
like
being
where there are this like big fast waves that are just a little too fast for a shorter boat.
I remember
you get a lot of waves in Outburst on the Grand.
I was on Team Dagger back in the 1920s and 30s, and I remember they were coming out with some new boat, and Joe Pulliam from Dagger called me and asked me what I thought. And at the time I was paddling an Outburst, and I was like, the Outburst is really as good as a boat you could ever make. I'm not sure why you'd make another one. I was joking, but I was kind of half being serious at the time. I mean, I really did love that boat, but we'll see. I'd have to try it again.
Dude, the Outburst is going to end up like the paddle talk. We're going to have to. All right, this comes at us.
The Outburst, there's hardly any out there. I mean, the illusion that these are great boats, even if true or not, can maintain because there's so few out there. And as Snowy pointed out, the mold is gone, right?
Yeah.
It's not like the RPM.
I think that genre, the 10-foot boat is going to be the new longboat.
Somebody,
I bet you people are going to start making them soon. It's going to happen.
The 10R.
The 10R would be sick. I think a 10-foot slicey boat would be sick. It's going to happen.
10-foot slicey boat would be sick.
The only thing that's hard is I think we have this perception that we want longer boats because we spent so much time paddling composite boats. And when you're paddling a plastic boat and there's all that weight in the ends, I think there's a limit to how long you can make the boat without it starting to get sluggish. But I think a 10-foot boat would be sick.
Yeah, I don't think 10 foot's anywhere close to that though. I think that. I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what the manufacturers decide to do. But I would jump all over a 10-foot boat. They should just call it the Outburst too. Harry Watson comes at us. I won't read all of Harry's email, but he talks about, and he attached some pictures and some things that talk about every single kayak that's shipped is wrapped in plastic. And he basically, there was a big long Facebook thread about this, and on down the line. I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on that? The boats, you have a plastic boat that's wrapped in plastic to get shipped somewhere, and as soon as they pull it out, they pull that plastic off, and that plastic is no longer used or anything like that. What do you guys think about that?
Can I get a plug in here for IR?
Come on, go for it.
I got a permission.
I'll bill you later.
We are on a full tilt or a full bore mission to get rid of plastic in all of our packaging. And so our spray skirts for years have been packaged in reusable grocery bags. We just take scrap fabric from our factory, and they have, all these factories have thousands of yards of fabric laying around from years past. We cut them into grocery bags. Our dry suits now come in repurposed billboards into like an IKEA tote bag that are sewn by blind people. Kid you not, they're sewn at a blind center down the road from us. And so that instead of a plastic bag, you'll get your dry suit wrapped up in an IKEA billboard bag. And then our shorts this year are coming in a reusable lunch bag, like a lunch bag. I think it's unconscionable that we continue to send as much plastic out into the world as an industry. I really do. Right? I mean, just take your boats beat up or scratched up and deal with it. Years ago, Liquid Logic used to use mesh, right? That cheesecloth.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with that. I'm not sure that's any better than plastic, to be honest, environmentally.
Yeah, they use like a fiberglass, like that black fabricy stuff now. It's not in plastic. But dude, I'm with you 100%. I'm all about just banning single-use plastic, man. I went to Puerto Rico since the last time that we spoke. I went first time. Chelsea, my wife, and I have been away from the kids since our twins were born. 3 years, just us. Went to Puerto Rico. Beautiful place, whatever. There was this, we were out snorkeling on this great, coral reef. You dive down. You're like, whoa, what is that? And you go down, and it's like, an old bottle, a plastic bottle with sand in it and shit. And it's like you go down the rivers around here, and it's like you just can't escape it, man. Ban that stuff. Just ban it.
Yeah.
You got anything to add? You got anything to add on that one, Lewis?
I don't. I mean, how do we operationalize this? We start calling out whitewater companies. What are we doing here?
I mean, I think we've done it just now. Like, I think it's going to be pretty much if you start shipping your boat in plastic, you're going to go along the same route as Zinke. You're going to get a shirt. You don't want a shirt.
No.
So there's other solutions out there. Good on you, John. That's really cool stuff, man.
Yeah. Seriously, this grocery bag. I use those grocery bags constantly. That's like, yeah.
Marshall.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Marshall. Great show. Keep it up. I'm going to be moving to Tennessee, most likely Nashville area, somewhat soon, and I was wondering if there are any Class 3-4 runs in that area. Alternatively, a good Tennessee guidebook would suffice. Thanks, Marshall. There are some good Tennessee guidebooks. Kirk Edelman makes a really good one. Look that up. If you're moving to Asheville, you're going to be close to Rock Island and the Plateau. The Ocoee will be within striking range, and there are all kinds of good whitewater options right around there. So American Whitewater has a really good river page, so I'd check that out and get.
Why don't you give him your home phone number? You can just.
Dude, it's uncanny how many, and this is something I want to say. Did I already say this? If you're going to write into the Hammer Factor, love all the listener mail. I mean, we all get a kick out of this. And we try to come up with a good answer to everything. For instance, we had some really good comments coming in on helmets, and we have Tom Sherburne, founder and owner of Shred Ready Helmets, who's coming on to try and answer it here in a little bit. But please just send them to the Hammer Factor email on the website. They get lost on my personal Facebook page. There's personal text messages come in. People hit me up on Instagram, and I lose them. Like the whole, Shrig thing on Facility and some other things, I lose them. So anyway, that's my request to the Hammer Factor listeners. Amos Ludwig. Now this is a long one. but we had an episode a while back where we had, was it Doc Rocco?
Yeah, this is like a year ago or more.
Yeah. We had Doc Rocco on to talk about Lyme's disease. We were going to kind of leave this one off, but we're getting into Lyme's disease season right now. And essentially, Doc Rocco said, hey, you get Lyme's disease, you go get a roundup of antibiotics, and you don't have Lyme disease anymore. John, you were talking about someone you know, and I believe it's the same person. Is that correct?
It was indeed Amos. Yeah, he was right. He suggested that was the case, and he's correct.
Okay. So Amos Ludwig writes in, and he basically goes into some of his experience and some various things. I'm going to take this email and put it in the show notes so you can look it over. He has some, I don't know, I'd call it conflicting opinion here with Doc Rocco. But Lyme disease is a tricky thing. If you got a tick on you, be careful taking it off.
I feel like in some ways, like what Doc Rocco was talking about was it was almost like a usage. It's like, how are we using the term Lyme's disease or something? Because it just seems like unquestionable that there are people who get Lyme disease and then suffer like horrific lifelong symptoms of that. And like, just because those guys can't explain how that's working exactly, it's like, yeah, you can say that they don't, quote, have Lyme disease anymore, but like something happened stemming from that Lyme disease that is just like fucking people up, and like pretending that you're just going to solve it with a round of antibiotics is not doing anybody any favors, you know?
Yeah, it seems like the medical community is being a little dismissive of those people, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Should we get into the PFD stuff? We got a couple weird questions about PFDs.
Well, I told Tom we'd have him on at 2, so it's 2.
When did we turn into like Dear Abby? We got to come up with some content of our own.
That's true. We have content.
Um,
I'm going to redouble my efforts here from 0 to something.
Sweet. That's really that makes me feel good.
I think it's, yeah, we need to, this is just a warm up. We're going to get back on our game here. I feel like whenever I think about how much we've run out of things to say, I'm reminded that we have barely scratched the surface of people worth having on the podcast.
Right.
Like, there's so many, like, I feel like I'm done. I haven't said anything useful in like a year and a half, but there are a lot of good people we could have on still.
I like prying salty opinions out of you. That's fun.
Yeah, I'm good for one of those, or every once in a while, for sure.
All right. Do you want to read this email while I get? Well, we should actually wait till I get Tom on here, because we're gonna have to reread it to him.
I have Tom in a hot minute.
Okay.
I got some questions for Tom too.
I got a question for you. Yeah, I do too.
Every time this happens and we have a pause like this, do you know what it means for me? Work.
I tried to fill for a second there, but without success.
Hello.
Tom, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. Welcome to the show. We have Tom Sherburne, founder and owner of Shred Ready Helmets. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
What's up, dude?
What's up, Tom?
Hey, Lewis and John.
So, let's get right into this. Tom, are you on the road? You're on your road to Colorado? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I'm heading back to Colorado. I relocated about a year and a half ago to Salida, and just racing back to go on a Dolores multi-day trip.
Dolores
nice.
Multi-day. Nice one, dude.
How's Salida these days? Has it changed much?
It sucks. Don't ever go there.
Yeah. It's just like Asheville.
Yeah,
this place
it's
sucks.
horrible. Yeah, exactly.
It's just like
that.
that.
Great.
It's just like that mountain biking in DuPont. It was horrible, wasn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. So was Fire Mountain. That place was horrible too.
Well, none of this can be any worse than this shithole. So
this comes at us. All right, Tom, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, man.
All right, this comes at us from Joshua Wilder. The subject, MIPS helmets. He says, after reading about the recent death of Sean Manchester, AW reported it as a head injury concussion, and thinking about all of the other times that our heads could interact and have interacted with rocks, why isn't the MIPS system an option in whitewater helmets? It's available for climbing, biking, snow sports, dirt bikes, motorcycles, every sport that requires a helmet besides whitewater helmets.
And can I even add something onto this? I have a biking helmet, and I don't know about you guys, but in my past 20 years, I've never taken a hard hit to my biking helmet, cross fingers, but I have taken at least 3 or 4 blows to my kayaking helmet, which would have killed me if I were not wearing a helmet. And it doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason or certification or anything behind helmet design. And that has always puzzled me.
And to pile one more thing on here, I think MIPS is, I question whether that's real.
Well, let's start with what is MIPS.
You want me to answer that question?
Yeah, please.
No, we're going to go ahead and talk, and we need you to just listen to us.
Well, you guys are so knowledgeable, you know? I mean, you're so opinionated and knowledgeable, so I thought I would defer.
What's your paddle length and offset before we get into this, Tom?
I'm paddling right now with an Adachi. I think it's a 30 degree or a 45. I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter what your offset is if you know how to kayak, you know? So,
well, we'll get into this later.
You don't even need a paddle, right? You can just paddle with your hands if you want.
Is it over
30 degrees right now?
Is it over 200 centimeters?
I don't think it is. It might be 202. I'm not sure. I don't know all these technical details about my gear.
Okay.
It has 2 blades and a bent shaft, and the Adachi is really a sick paddle. I really love it, man. It's really nice. So anyway, I haven't paddled with some Gala Sport or whatever Lewis has, you know, some newfangled thing.
We digress. What is MIPS?
MIPS is multiple direction impact protection system. It's meant to reduce impact energy that would be at an angle to the helmet instead of straight down, so a rotational force. A lot of brain injuries and concussion and things like that are caused not by like a direct hard impact, but by the brain kind of sloshing around inside your head and tearing neurons and fibers, and so it attempts to reduce that rotational force by putting what's called a low friction layer in a helmet.
So my question about this is, I believe in theory that this makes sense, but like it's like your helmet's not really stuck to your head that well to begin with, right? And it's like you have hair, and like if you hit your helmet at kind of a glancing blow, the helmet slides way more than I imagine this like inner layer actually sliding.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. You know, helmets, if you can kind of think of a helmet as kind of mimicking your skull as a second skull almost, you know. So if you have your brain inside, and then you have your cerebrospinal fluid, and then the dura mater, and then on top of your skull you have your skin, and your skin moves around on top of your skull. If you put your fingers up on your head, and you can feel your skin moving around a little bit, and your hair too. So you do, and the MIPS kind of just tries to kind of mimic that slippage, I guess is the better. That slip against the internal energy absorbing foam in the helmet and your head.
So I guess
I
sort of have seen what the like lab tests look like for this, and it seems a little off from what you would actually experience in the wild. Like, do you believe that this actually makes a difference?
As far as their lab test results, I don't know. I don't have any concrete data or experience with like real life experiences, but from their data, it definitely reduces the G forces on a rotational impact. So,
Man, so clarify what a rotational impact is. Is that just when your head hits and your head spins really fast?
no, it's kind of think of it like so the how can I say it? So kind of a whipping action of your head, I guess. So
Or just think about like a glancing blow kind of that.
yeah, exactly. A glancing blow is exactly where, like, in some accidents, like I've seen some work or some research done by a guy at David Halstead at the Southern Impact Research Center out of, I think it's associated with the University of Tennessee, and where you'll get a helmet and it'll have no damage to it that's been in an accident, and the person is, really messed up. They have a severe, traumatic brain injury, but there'll be no damage to the helmet, and you're like, what's going on? And he did some studies where he would put a helmet on a helmet testing rig, and instead of using a fixed head form, they put the head form on what's called a biopedalic neck. It's basically an arm that's able to flex. So when the helmet hits the anvil or the rock, I guess, the fake rock, I guess, or the scientific rock, that the neck, it kind of mimics the action of the neck. And he's shown some really big G forces experienced on by using that biopedalic neck. He's able to show some really big G forces experienced by your brain, but almost no damage to the helmet. So, so that's kind of the concept. Is this? If you can imagine, like you're falling and you kind of stop and your head goes forward and like glances across the rock or something. That rotational force, kind of. Your brain is kind of sloshing. Your brain is kind of floating around in your skull. It's not fixed to anything. It's in that cerebrospinal fluid, and as and it has the consistency of kind of like Jello. And so as that rotational force on your brain happens, it tears the neurons and your tissues, and that's what they're trying to get around by adding this low friction layer.
Interesting.
So my take on this is that paddle sports is just too poor and stupid to institute any of this, and that this fancy head protection is for like real sports with like real people.
Yeah, that's the kind of neat thing about the company MIPS is it's kind of an outgrowth of a think tank in a university in Sweden, I believe, and as a company, it's kind of cool because they're just adding they talk about as their low friction layer as an ingredient to the recipe for a helmet. So it's actually pretty reasonably priced as far as putting it in a helmet. You buy the parts from MIPS themselves, and they do a bunch of testing as well to ensure that everything's right. And it's not. They've already done the upfront research, and the main issue that I've always been interested in putting MIPS from the very beginning into a helmet, but the one issue that I always saw was kayaking is a little bit different than other sports like snowboarding or bicycling. You're upside down in the river and you take a hit, and you don't roll up and you take another hit, and then you bounce down another rapid and you bang your head again. And I'm not, and you want your helmet to be snug and in place. And the way the low friction layer is added to the helmet is by, so you kind of picture an internal shell that's hooked to the EPS or the EPP foam by little rubber bands, basically. So an elastomer that stretches and moves. And I've just never been really comfortable, like that first hit, it's fine on, but is the helmet out of place, or is your head exposed a little bit when the second hit happens or the third hit happens?
I see.
And so that, and also, I just don't trust little rubber bands not breaking. So, if you're upside down and you take a big hit and the rotational force is big enough to snap one of those bands, then you're kind of, SOL after that point. And they do have some other solutions and that aren't really available to the public yet. So that are kind of some military applications that we're looking at right now. So
interesting.
So as a helmet designer, I mean, is there any regulations in the U.S. for helmet design, and how do you? I mean, I know with life jackets you have UL approval, which is a pretty stringent set of rules to how to make a life jacket, which also protects you from most, if not all, liability issues with UL approval on it. Where do helmets stand in that regard?
So for U.S. standards are bike is governed by the Consumer Products Safety Commission, I believe, CPSC. Mm-hmm. And snow is done through the American Standards and Test and Measurement Society, ASTM. Mm-hmm. And both of those are, bike helmets are mandatory for the CPSC approval, but everything else but it's all voluntarily. They give you the protocol, you test it in your labs, you test every time you produce, you do a production run and you take a sampling of the helmets and you test them and make sure that they pass the standard. For whitewater, it's a little bit different. There's only one standard, and it's called CE 1385. It's a European standard, and it's a one-time kind of test. In other words, to get the certificate, then you have to send it to a third party, your samples to a third-party lab. They approve it, and then you go through what's called a notified body. That notified body gives you the approval to put the CE mark on your helmets.
And that's mandatory for sales in Europe?
That's mandatory for sales in Europe, right. Mm-hmm.
But not in the U.S.?
We do it not in the U.S., but it's kind of become the standard of care now, 10 years ago, nobody was doing it, and we started doing it now. Everybody does it. So, but it's a fairly simple, I wouldn't call it simple, but compared to like bike or snow, the drop heights and the energy levels are much lower. And when you think about helmet testing standards, you have to, they're premised around the idea of the head dropping straight onto some hard object. So that height, so you're sitting on a bicycle, if you just fell off your bike and hit your head, you would, drop what, I don't know, a meter and a half, 2 meters. Whereas like in a kayak, you're sitting on your butt and you fall over, into the water, and it's not as great a distance from your head to the ground. So that is the kind of is the lower energy level part of it. So.
Interesting.
But, falling off a 50-foot waterfall onto a rock is probably, In that case, I don't think anything is, if you took a direct hit to your head off a 50-footer, you probably wouldn't survive. So.
Tom, have you seen those? Yeah. Have you seen these new Trek bike helmets that they're pitching, this new technology?
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I just picked up some pamphlets on it, and that's kind of a combination between. It's really interesting. I hadn't put it in my hand, but I just actually I forgot my helmet on the way on this trip out to the East Coast, so I had to buy a new helmet, and I picked up one of their Bontrager helmets and with the MIPS in it, and but then I saw the little pamphlet for the what do they call it, a new wave or something like that. It's really, really interesting. I don't know how well it works, but it's really interesting. It's kind of a
what is it
between? It's like I don't know how would you describe it, Lewis? It's like polycarbonate. It's like polycarbonate, like a weave of polycarbonate plastic that's in this kind of funky triangular squishy design, like a spring almost set on edge. So the liner kind of moves around, and the polycarbonate takes all the impact.
It's like,
So
yeah, it's like a honeycomb that's rotated like 90 degrees so that
yeah, but it's not
getting...
connected to. Yeah, it's not connected on every side, so you have that honeycomb is allowed to shift around and move.
Interesting.
So,
Do you think that has some relevance in whitewater?
I don't know. I'm definitely intrigued by it for sure. Because it both has, that it kind of combines. Are you guys familiar with the Koroyd material? Which is, I think Smith puts it in their bike helmets and snow helmets. It's a polycarbonate straws, basically, as tubes that are engineered, and then they're fused together with an elastomer. And so it allows a lot of ventilation and a lot of impact absorption, even better than EPS. So I kind of look at this, the Trek New Wave material, I think that's what it's called, the New Wave, as kind of a combination between MIPS and Koroyd together. So it's kind of interesting, for sure.
What about, Tom?
But
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
So a while back, I had a pretty solid mountain bike crash, and while my helmet seemed pretty good, I did bang my head pretty good and had some pretty good scratches and whatnot on my helmet. But some of the guys I were with who were, way more into mountain biking than I am, they recommended that I had to get rid of that helmet and get a new one because it's taken a hit. I would agree with that. Anytime, yeah, absolutely. Is that something in whitewater we need to consider?
Somewhat, yes, but the material, like your bike helmet's made out of EPS foam, which is expanded polystyrene, basically a styrofoam on steroids, and it has internal, there's just little beads of polystyrene that are filled with air, and they can crack really easy under any kind of, and you might not be able to see it, the cracking could be internal inside the liner itself. And so anytime that you hit a helmet pretty hard like that, a bike helmet or anything with EPS, you should probably replace it.
Interesting.
For whitewater, everybody uses either what's called EPP, which is expanded polypropylene, or other types of resilient foams like vinyl nitrile, or EVA is very common, but it's probably the worst. It's basically mini cell, and it's just not good stuff to have in a helmet. It has a lot of rebound to it, so it doesn't really absorb a lot of impact. It kind of balances everything right back in the opposite direction.
Could we read you another email about full face helmets? Maybe you could shed some light on this. This is from
wait, John, before you do that, real quick.
Sorry.
So the question is, why isn't the MIS system an option in whitewater helmets? You would say because it just...
I would say, I can't speak for other companies, but for me, I'm just not happy with the way that the low friction layer is attached to the helmet. I think that it allows the helmet... It's just because you could be upside down and you could take multiple hits on the same flip. And so if that thing, if two hits are like really close together and that helmet's out of place, I think it exposes your head to even, whereas if you're on a bicycle and you fall down and, you bump your head or bang your head pretty hard, you might continue to fall and take more hits, but I just think it leaves it exposed, and I'm just not comfortable with the way it's attached to the liner.
Okay.
So,
sorry, John. Thank you.
That's my reason, anyway. But we are currently looking at. They have a new solution, so stand by.
So this is from Seth Dow. He writes, early in my kayaking career, I really wanted to get a full face near the time I was transitioning to Class 5. Then I decided the trade-offs were not worth it. For many years, I've now paddled with a sweep protection rocker helmet, and I've loved it, but my wife has pressured me to buy and wear a full face. I would do this if I thought it added safety, but I don't have any evidence either way. Intuitively, it would make sense that having a full face would add safety, but I don't like the idea of decreased ability to communicate, see, and increase in the amount of hard plastic on my body for breaking my hand on bigger drops. Also, no one really wears them. Opinions.
Huh. I think if you value your face and teeth, I think a full face is like really, especially on some harder stuff, is probably really important. Also, if you take a hit to your jaw is really susceptible to concussions. Like a lot of people don't realize that, but if you take a big hit to your jaw, you can knock yourself out pretty hard. That would be one reason to wear a full face. The other 2 points that he makes, though, is about communication. I can see that as being a valid point as well. So,
I mean, when I start paddling out here, I'm suddenly paddling drops where I'm thinking, man, I could really knock myself silly with my paddle.
Yeah, you should
at the bottom of these things. But Gelman, why don't you wear a full face helmet? Besides the obvious, that you don't look like a tool bag.
It's funny. I feel like full faces had a little bit of a moment out here when, you didn't seem like a tool bag if you were wearing a full face. I guess I always kind of worried about catching something underwater with it, or it just seemed like sort of a liability in some ways, or something that could end up yarding on your neck.
Yeah. That's another valid point for not wearing it, the face mask snagging on something.
I guess I just never, I don't know. I guess I'm just not running that kind of whitewater. If I'm thinking that I'm about to destroy my face, I'm probably just not going to run whatever it is.
Yeah, but Max said he broke his nose on Wishbone a while ago, and I can completely see that,
Yeah, I think you just learn to overcome that with technique.
Yeah, just
I've for sure hit my face on my cockpit rim. I've probably taken more hits to my face on my cockpit rim than I have on rocks in the course of my paddling career. But I think you just kind of learn to manage it. I don't know. I guess
taking a hit to the face. I try not to flip over.
Yeah, I've taken a few hits to the face. It's not fun.
Yeah.
I paddled a full face. I gave it a full day in court, and it just did not pass the test. It was not for me.
It is extremely annoying when you're trying to talk to somebody on the river and constantly finding them to pull the chin bar down so you can hear them.
Yeah, that was the first thing. Even before we got to the river, I was noticing that. But then you can't see as good. And I'm sure you'll get used to it because, you get used to it. If, I used to race motocross, I got used to my vision with that helmet, but you cannot see as good. You do not have the same field of view. So
yeah, that when we designed the standard full face, that was a big consideration. Both the angle of the face mask, so it wouldn't run into your shoulder when you turned your head to look, and also, that corner of the face mask where it meets the helmet, so it wouldn't block vision when you're looking over your shoulder at something.
I've also seen people with the sweet full face in particular, where if you don't have the bar that's going down across the bridge of your nose, basically, the helmet almost channels your paddle directly into the bridge of your nose. I've seen I've definitely seen people break their nose on their paddle wearing a full face helmet.
And I think
another point I was going to say is that the face mask can take a hit to the jaw or to the your chin, but the cockpit of your boat or a paddle can still make it inside that helmet. So
I think if you wear a bar across the front of your helmet, you're making a statement for sure that you may not want to make.
The statement is, you're here on the shit. You better back that up. The shit.
You guys are terrible, man. There's some guy out there right now unscrewing the bar off of his helmet.
I know, right? And then we're gonna get
Clay Wright, yeah, that was Clay Wright loved his we call it a NAR bar. Go from the brim or the bottom of the edge of the helmet and the front to the face mask.
It makes perfect sense. Just put a bar in front of your helmet. But we're such as a sport, we're such assholes that we fight this at every turn, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like it's relatively acceptable out here. Like if you wear a full face helmet, I don't really give it a second thought, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's
I
okay.
I
We've
kind of
seen
want
some-
to
just
personally.
actually. You want to what?
I mean, I wish that I could. I mean, I really think there's benefits to it, but
Like like 20 years ago, if you saw somebody wearing a full face, you were like, who is that goober? And now I just like, I don't think it really registers anymore. Like, I think it's like wearing a helmet skiing, like when we were kids, if you saw somebody wearing a helmet skiing, you're like, that guy's either sending it to 11 or he's just like, plus, and like now, like everybody wears a helmet skiing and you don't really think twice about it. And that's kind of how I feel about full faces for hiking.
That's good to hear, I suppose. So, Tom, what advice do you give our listeners about buying a helmet? Like, what should they be looking for? What should they avoid? What's the big picture here?
They should. The most important component, I think, is the fit of the helmet. It needs to fit on your head correctly. Or if it's too loose, it's just going to slop around on your head and expose your head when you don't want it to be. If it's too tight, you're just going to have a headache. So, and just one thing I see a lot with a lot of folks with helmets is that the little triangle buckle on the side of the helmet that brings two straps together from the front and the rear attachment points is like you'll see folks, and I always see them like dangling down around the buckle, and at that point they're not doing anything. So I always like to have that triangle buckle like directly below the front rivet, almost straight down from it, and that helps a lot with the roll off of the helmet, rolling backwards.
Right.
And then I think that is the key thing, and then that it has the right materials, like a good foam in there, like an EPP or vinyl nitrile, or the new material that we're working with it's called Decklin, and it's kind of a rate-dependent foam. It's kind of super soft and conforms to your head, but when you take a big hit, it just hardens up and takes amazing blows. So.
yeah, I think I
That's
saw
the main thing. But that's not really an issue anymore because, all the manufacturers are all using good foams. When we started Shred Ready, almost everyone's just sticking mini cell in a helmet. And
Right. Like my Grateful Head's helmet was just like some vinyl ester resin and some mini cell, like a 1/4 inch of mini cell on the inside.
Yeah, well, I remember, or your old Ace racing helmet,
Hell
no
yeah.
foam at all. Just
That was the question I was.
plastic strap.
Yeah.
That was the question I was saving for you, Tom. Is do you ever look back on our slalom days and just like feel sick?
Like a dome. I remember Billy Hearn's dome race.
I definitely
Oh, right.
look
The
back.
domer. Yeah, the Lugville domer, right? Like one little piece of foam in there. But the slalom guys, they don't, like, some of those helmets, like those check helmets, had such giant holes, you can put a whole bow of your boat inside your helmet. It's like, why are you even wearing a helmet?
I wore that helmet. I wore that helmet for just
Oh.
an absolutely unreasonable amount of time in some absolute unreasonable circumstances.
I forgot that. I forgot Lewis had one of those things.
I am certain my first trip down the Blackwater, I was wearing an Ace helmet. There's no question. And my first several years running Great Falls was in an Ace helmet. I have the pictures to prove it.
I feel like I went through a period when I was wearing helmets where guys were like, dude, we're going to go run a serious river today. You got to put on an Ace or something.
And then you wear the Ace, and then you take a hit, and the plastic suspension system would cut the crap out of your forehead.
Yeah.
It was like it actually make the impact worse.
Oh my
So helmets have
god.
come a long way. The Ace helmet was part of the reason the CE standard got started. So there's just a little history there for you.
Well, Tom,
All right.
thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm stoked,
Thanks,
man.
Tom.
My first time on the Hammer Factor.
Yeah, dude, it won't be the last. Hey, couple things. We're starting an initiative here, and we're gonna start hounding people. We're done with single-use plastic. So I don't know how you're shipping your helmets now, Tom, but
Cut the shit.
We use I've been I still haven't worked. Yeah, we started. We have our helmets in a plastic bag, but there's no other than that. We kind of have to do that unless you guys have a better idea to protect the finish on the helmet, or like another material that's more sustainable, I'm totally game. I would change in a heartbeat. And but then it's inside of a Tyvek kind of non-woven fabric material that doubles as a backpack. And yeah, we quit using boxes about 15 years ago. So,
Well, we'll have to figure out
something.
something.
Use plastic. I don't know. Yeah, you guys got any ideas? I mean, John, you're the manufacturer. So
Yeah, we could talk about this. If you're really interested, give me a shout, because we've been working on a bunch of stuff.
yeah, I've been racking my brains for years about how to get rid of packaging.
Yeah, I'd want to know your specific requirements, but we can discuss off the air.
Sure.
Also, since you're in Colorado now, Tom, June 22nd, the OB Joyful race is back on. You should go out there and figure out some way to support those guys.
You're going to want to wear 2 helmets.
Sure.
If you
I was about to say there'll probably be a lot of people in need of a new helmet after that.
So I should bring some inventory, is what you're saying.
That may not be a bad idea.
Right.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. Is that the same weekend as FibArc?
I don't know. That's a good question. June 22nd is when it is. So.
Sounds FibArc-y.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be around that zone.
Yeah.
I think FibArc's a little later than that, if my memory serves me. But
okay, well, all right. Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm glad I could help out with your questions. And
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, dude.
Yep.
have a good
All
one.
right. Cheers.
Night.
Yep. Take care.
Southern Impact Research Center. Wasn't the name of your first paddling crew before T-Dub, John Grace?
The Southern Impact Research Center.
Yeah. Wasn't that you guys?
We waffled back and forth. That was interesting. I never even knew what the MIPS was. So, I don't know. That makes sense. Dude, I took on the Turnbull. We were doing a first ascent in New Zealand on the Turnbull River. And man, I hit my head, cracked my helmet, cracked my T-dub. I rolled up, but it was just like, it definitely was a wake-up call as far as head hits, man. It is no joke. No joke. Well, thanks for that message. Where are we at, man?
We have the PFD questions. The high and dry people keep hammering us. I don't know where to go with that.
Well, let's get
you
into
should read Tim Bragan's email. I think he's exposed. I think something's coming to light.
Where's that one at?
It's the photo of the high and dry.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. This is definitely something that we kind of need to talk about here. And I mean, now that we have Weld on the line, we can kind of answer that. So we get a message. This comes at us from Tim Bragan. We were talking about the guy in the high and dry who just absolutely had a full-on 11 in the beatering category down the Cascades. And
again, this is actually one of the Long Creek gangsters for sure.
It is.
Well, that's an interesting conspiracy, because it could be kind of like this could be right in there with the same conspiracy of EJ backing his trailer into the lake, looking for some publicity. Weld, do you have the Long Creek gangsters cruising around with high and dries? Because when you slowed down the video, and I'm glad Tim brought this to our attention, you slowed down the video and he zoomed in to the part on the high and dry. What does it say? Clear as can be. Immersion research, high and dry. It says it right here. So obviously somewhere along the line, something's going on that our listeners need to know about. How deep does this
anybody
tunnel
know
go?
where John Weld was the day that video got filmed on the Cascades?
That's a good question. Let's see if the date is on here.
I could have been testing out new gear.
Mm-hmm.
All this high and dry stuff is like 4 or 5 years old at least, I think, right? I don't think there's any mention of it recently.
No, this is
How it
new.
just surfaced.
This is, you know all about this. Don't act dumb. Dude, we're so on to you with this whole
High
thing.
and dry.
We are so on to you. I mean, it's branded right there. I got a picture. Hey,
Yeah.
listeners,
Photos don't lie.
I'll put this in the show notes. you look for yourself. I mean,
Right.
it is right there. Here's a good one. This is a legit topic of conversation here. Pierce Huser writes in, just wondering, what kind of methods are there to check the depth of a waterfall other than scouting them at uber low flows?
Can I tell you a story about running a waterfall with Boomer? Not Eric Boomer,
Oh.
the other Boomer.
When was this?
This is a long time ago.
Yes, let's hear it.
So do we have time for this?
Dude, we're so past our time limit.
I know the listeners love the old school story. So we were running the North Fork of the Blackwater. This was probably, I'm going to say certainly in the first half dozen descents of the run. It had gotten run by Wade Zinter and some other people, and they did a story in the AW, and that was a nearby creek. So we went over to go run it. There was really not a lot of data. We knew from the article there was a 30-foot waterfall in there that they had run, and so we got to this is Michael Janoska, Boomer, and I got to what is clearly this waterfall, and gluteal mash it's called. And we're like, well, I was like, all right, I guess I'll run. Or no, we wanted to go check the paddle. We want to check the depth, and so we lowered myself and my boat down off this cliff, and I poked around my paddle and found a little deep spot to land. But there was definitely some shallow spots in there too. And Boomer's up at the top, and I was sort of giving the thumbs up like right here, and he gave me the thumbs up, and we hauled my boat back up again, and we were sitting at the top, and it was kind of a Rochambeau thing to see who's going to go first. Well, Boomer ended up going first and wasn't exactly where I was poking around, and I was above at the top, and I couldn't see over the lip, but I heard a thunk, and I sort of peered over the edge of the lip of this thing, and I see Boomer's boat floating in his sight upside down, and he had hit one of these rocks, and he's not coming out of the boat, and there was like a 3 or 4 count where I wasn't quite sure what to do, and finally I jumped in, and this is cold weather, it's snow on the ground and stuff, but I jumped off this thing into the pool, and as I'm jumping, I see him come out from under the boat. But he had shoved his tibia and fibia through his foot. Like his foot was turned back up towards his face, the bottom of his foot. And he had thought he'd broken the ballast wall. Well, that was actually his bone going through his foot. And it ensued a very long, not very long, but obviously a really shitty rescue, where he's saying, he's going to lose his foot. And I'm telling him, no, he's not going to lose his foot. I'm thinking, dude, this guy's going to lose his foot. It turns out he did not lose his foot, but it's definitely an incident where we were careless on the probing of the depth of the waterfall. So it does happen.
I have a similar story from my
that's right.
teenage years.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, this must have been 97? Somewhere in 97, and we ran that, I think it's called the Chutes de Plaisance up in Quebec. Have you been up there, Grace? It's on the Petite Nation.
Mm-mm. I mean, I've been up to Quebec a few times, but not that
this,
river.
Like, rolling lip, like, kind of slide to drop that, I mean, at the time we thought it was like 50 feet. Maybe it's not quite that high, but I was paddling one of the very early iterations of the wave sport kinetic coming straight from the Ottawa Rodeo. I had metal foot pegs in that thing. Somebody went first. I thought it looked a little deeper, a little to the right, went right where I thought I wanted to, and just pitoned my brains out. Like, probably went up to like about my cockpit rim in the pool before I pitoned, and broke both my ankles, one of them extremely badly. Had to go back, had to get surgery. Was on crutches for, 4 months. They were saying there was like a 70% chance I was going to have to get my ankle fused. Just a horrible experience.
Boomer did get his ankle fused after this. His x-ray looked like cat food. It was a disaster in there.
Yeah. This is a long way of saying, I guess, we don't know what the answer is, but be careful. I don't know. Don't paddle a T Canyon or a wave sport kinetic. I think a modern creek boat is probably pretty helpful in this regard. 45ing things rather than going for the full pencil. Probably also helpful.
I had the idea.
I mean, there's that story about Jason. The kid in California who's the really good freestyle paddler who broke his back so badly.
Yeah, Jason Craig.
Jason Craig, yeah. I mean, another one that looked like, beautiful clean drop, but there was he boofed it and there was a rock just like right under the surface in the boil and, broke his back very, very badly. So, I mean, I think, if you're on a first ascent kind of mission, don't be cavalier about that stuff.
Yeah, do your homework.
One little bit of advice is a lot of times you can find a lot about the depth of a waterfall by throwing a big 6, 8, 10-foot long log off of it.
Very scientific. I mean, the thing is, like, usually you think you can tell just by looking at the boil, right? Like, it's like you develop sort of like an innate sense for this stuff.
But it's so hard, like in that tannin water up in Quebec, and all, it's just so hard. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I didn't know. It was just.
No.
I don't know. I think you can. I think it's one of those things. 45 it. I've definitely thrown some logs off of there before, and I've been to some waterfalls. And let me tell you about my log technique. All right, let me break it down for you. So you need a log that is as long as your kayak, okay? And it can't be a short log. It's got to be as long as your kayak, and it has to pencil, okay? Because it can't come off sideways and the log come out unscathed and be like, oh, it's fine, It's got to pencil, and if the log comes out and it's shattered on the
worst advice you've ever given on this show,
and it's shattered on the ends, then that means it's probably not good to go. If it pencils in and it's all good, personally, I'd give it. That's just my 2 cents. You wanted to know, Pierce?
There you have it.
That's what I got. But I don't know. That's, how many times have we stood at the top of a waterfall and been like, do you think it's deep? I mean, that's a really good question. I don't exactly know the answer. Log probe has helped me in the past.
I mean, what it is the odds are in your favor. Is that water's been pouring over that thing long enough. There's probably not a rock there, but that's all it is. That's what we're basing all this on, is the odds are in our favor, but clearly it's not always the case.
All right, two final listener mails here before we get into Rants and Raves. This comes at us. This is our 2 PFD questions. Ryan Stevenson, yo fellas, I was talking with Curry, that's Philip Curry from Astral Designs. I was talking with Curry last week and bounced the idea of a whitewater fanny pack. He quickly relegated into the realm of club boaters, people who wear neoprene gloves. Wasn't a fan, I guess. My thought is they would be really convenient if they were waterproof for stashing some small items. Yes, PFDs have pockets, but stashing some more items would be convenient, and PFD pockets aren't waterproof. They've made a huge comeback in mountain biking with good reason. They would be significantly more acceptable than a scarf on the river. Thoughts? Cheers, Ryan Stevenson, R&D engineer at the Werner Paddles. Thanks for that email, Ryan. Dude, and so do you think he's talking about like a fanny pack that, buckles in the front and the little pack is behind your back, kind of the way some people will wear like a throw rope?
Here's the problem. Can we just get right down to the problem?
Yeah, let's do that.
What's a watershed dry bag cost? Retail.
Doesn't matter. It's worth every cent.
Well, I'm just saying. Just give me a price.
$80.
$80. That would be the bare minimum cost for this fanny pack, right? And probably be more than that because you couldn't do the same easy seals they have in the watershed bags. You're looking at $120 for a fanny pack. I mean, no one's buying a $120 fanny pack.
And like, what's the upside to that? Like, it's not like like if you're mountain biking, you get your stuff off your back. But like if you're paddling, you have this like giant kayak that's ready to be filled with your junk. It's like, why would you not just put it in your boat?
You can get your weed even faster.
Good point. And you could like bust out your phone.
Shrig.
You could bust out your phone and just frickin' Instagram right there. Bam! Look where I'm at. Come check it out. Try and get my photo. I don't know, man.
I commit to you now that I will relentlessly mock whoever the first person I see wearing a fanny pack is on the river.
It's not going to happen. Keeping stuff dry is too expensive, especially keeping stuff dry in a space like that. It's just too expensive.
Yeah.
Even if people wanted it.
I would ask Ryan this: what is it that you want to keep dry that you need that access to? Because I don't. Even if it was the same cost, I'm not sure what I would use it for. I'm not sure what the need is, but interesting idea. I think the cost is gonna kind of prohibit it from ever being a thing. But this comes at us from Harley Godart? Hello, talking about PFDs with friends, and we were discussing if PFD rib protection is a real concern or if it's fabricated to cover up the restrictions in mobility it would bring. A few PFDs that come to mind would be Astral's green jacket or Coquetette's Poseidon, or any jacket that covers the ribs by placing flotation on the ribs. I'm interested in what you guys think. Anybody want to take a stab at this one?
The only time I've really took a hit to the rib is when I was teaching kayaking, and you get students just wailing on your ribs as they come screaming into eddies.
Like torpedoing you with their boat kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm like looking over my shoulder at one guy floundering on the eddy line, and someone else comes hauling acid in my rib cage at the front of the boat.
Yeah, that really is like 99% of rib hazards are other people. Just space out on the river, and then you don't have to worry about rib protection.
I like the idea of it, but I am just such a minimalist. I just want less around my waist. I just want less stuff, So to me, that what you would gain out of getting some rib protection from it, it would be too much of the lack of mobility that I would sacrifice to get that. But that's just my opinion. I mean, Weld, how many times have I been like, with the dry suit, just get all that stuff out of there. I don't want any of that stuff, or just, I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. Rib protection sounds like a good idea, though.
I hate all the gear you have to wear out here to go kayaking. I hate it. I really do. I just want to paddle in a t-shirt.
Yeah,
or whatever.
That's
you know what I mean?
That's where I was at yesterday afternoon. It's already t-shirt weather. All right, boys and girls. Do you feel like we've done our time here? We're at
Jesus, like 6 hours.
1 hour. 1 hour 46 minutes.
I have nothing for rants and raves.
I got 3 raves.
Why don't you take them? Do them for all of us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, welcome to everyone's favorite segment of the show, Rants and Raves. One thing I want to add real quick, did you guys see that video of Nick Troutman in that boatercross video getting, like you say, like speared by a boat in his head and getting a really bad concussion and the whole 9 yards?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Fuck boatercross.
That's exactly where I was going with it.
Maybe that'll be my rant.
That's okay. So yeah, I was kind of feeding you that because I had raves and I wanted to rant about that, but Chelsea was telling me, she's like, John, I was sitting there and I was listening to you edit the show and like all you do is rant. You've ranted like the past 5 shows. So I'm like, all right, I'm coming back big with some raves. I'm gonna rave about forward offset on paddles. This is kind of a new thing to me over the past couple years with the Odachi and whatnot. And I paddled actually a Stakeen. And then Werner has this new paddle, a Surge, and it's like a powerhouse blade, but with a forward offset. And just the purchase you get with that forward offset compared to just a normal offset paddle, like neutral offset paddle, it is a big difference. So compare the two. I recommend you to compare the two. So I'm going to rave about that forward offset. I'm going to rave about. So during our sabbatical here on the Hammer Factor, I did a big trail run across the Smokies. I ran 70 miles across the Appalachian Trail across the Smokies. It took like 22 hours, and I could go into the whole trip and how it went, but it was really good. It was really hard. It was harder than I thought it was going to be, but it was a good run. But I'm just going to rave about just the human body and just how it can adapt and what you can do, just with a little repetition and a little effort. Because when I did my first training run for that, it was 12 weeks.
Are you raving
before.
about yourself?
I'm raving about the transition that you can get with practice. Because that first run, I ran 9 miles. It took me 3 hours. It about killed me up this hill. And a mere 12 weeks later, you can run for 22 hours straight. It's not just me. I'm not raving about myself. I'm just raving about how just the amazing stuff that the human body can do, like Dane doing that Cobra flip off of Spirit. I mean, isn't that amazing that a human body can do that? And that's it. I got one more rave, but I'm going to save it for next episode.
What do you got, Weld?
This is a tough one because I want to rave about the Machno. Because it is the most user-friendly creek boat I've ever paddled. But at the same time, is that really a good thing? I don't know. But damn it, that boat isn't easy to paddle. It's almost too easy. I don't know. Is that a rave?
I think it's a rave.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could rave for a long time about modern kayaks. Like, I feel like there was a lull there for like 10 years when boats just did not progress. Like, how long was like the Nomad, like a cutting edge creek boat, like,
right,
like, or like a viable creek boat, like 7 or 8 years. Like, I paddled the Remix for like 7 or 8 years, and like just like nothing changed. And now there's like a bunch of new pretty sick boat designs out there, and it was like they're coming out with new boats again like pretty regularly. They're like good. Like, I feel like there was just a real period of stagnation there, and like I'm pumped that we're past that.
Is that your rave?
I don't know, it can be. I don't really have anything else.
I think you just backed
I want
up
to
Weld's rave.
I want to rant about John Weld not going kayaking with me. I'm not sure exactly how I've acquired this reputation in his eyes as someone who's weird going kayaking with. When I text Weld to go mountain biking, I get a response within like 90 seconds. And when I text Weld to go kayaking, I maybe get a response in like 24 hours.
When Gelman and I ran the Little White, he was like, he'd be like, all right, truck and trailer. And I'd be like, truck and what? And he'd be like, disappearing over the lip of something. And I'd be like, is that the name of this rapid? Disappearing. And then I finally figured I'd be like, the trailer's still in the eddy. Where am I going? So I'll go boating with you when I get to know the river a little bit better.
I've taken so many people down that river for their first time. They've all had positive experiences, except for John Weld, who doesn't trust me.
This is really interesting. Like, why don't you trust Lewis? Are you just looking for a different experience, Weld?
I know what we did to Lewis is when he was a kid at Valley Mill Boats, and I know that was in his life, and I feel like that's going to come out, and it did come out. And
like 30 years of pent-up hazing I'm ready to unleash on you.
Sure. Like, I think if Sam Drivo to this day caught me in a dark alley, he would knife me with like take me down.
Dead arms and sternum rubs.
Yes.
Until the balance is restored in the universe.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna rave. You know what? I'm gonna get another rave. I'm just gonna rave about race season being here. It looked like they had a good race up at the Cuyahoga Falls race. Remember when we had Don and those guys on the show? Sounds like it was a good, well-attended Little White race. You know, we got Obie Joyful race coming up. There's just,
Are you going to come out for North Fork?
I love the racing. Man, I may be able to come out, but I don't know. I have a trip that came up actually to Colorado that I may be going on during the North Fork Championship. It was on the schedule.
I feel like as a race organizer, you would uniquely appreciate the work that Regan and James put into that thing.
Oh, dude, I have no doubt.
We went out to I paddled a section of North Fork not too long ago. I should be raving about Ryan Bailey because sincerely one of the coolest dudes I've ever met, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just standing in front of the cafe he's building, it felt iconic. You know what I mean? I've been looking at pictures of that forever, of that building, and it seemed like sacred ground in some way. The North Fork, however, was about as unfamiliar stretch of river as I've ever paddled. It is nothing like anything I'm used to kayaking in any way I can conceive of.
You did this
It's
recently?
a river in the very loosest sense of the word that I understand it. Yeah, like maybe 3 weeks ago. It's just a blasted out freight train.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just nothing that I'm familiar with. This is a whole different style of river running.
It's a unique place.
Yeah, it is totally different. There's no doubt about it. I remember being not interested in going to the North Fork of the Payette for the longest time, and Fred Coriel is the one who finally talked me into it. He was like, dude, we've got to go there. I'm telling you. I'm like, man, so finally we just kind of carved out 3 days on this trip we were going to do, and it was so rad. I had so much fun doing laps on that river. It was off the chain.
Freddie's an operator out there for sure.
Lewis, did you rant a rave?
Yeah, I ranted about Weld.
Okay, that's a good one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to the Hammer Factor, and we'll get together soon. We appreciate all of the listener mails. I hate to rant about where they come in, but it's going to be way more effective to get them on the show if you send them to the email address at hammerfactor.com. As always, give us a thumbs up on the iTunes ratings. We love those. I think we're over like 150 ratings or something like that with some pretty good reviews. Should I read some reviews on there? Actually, I'll do that next show. Next show I'll read some reviews. They're pretty funny. Until then, boys.
Cheers. All right, see you next time.